Hollywoodism was really good. The Jews behind Hollywood.
Hi, this is Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz coming at you live from the Golan for Israel 365 News. I'm here with a very dear friend, Rabbi Herschel Harry Moskoff. He is an investigative archaeologist, and he's probably the only one I know who is doing investigative archaeology based on Jewish sources. And it's amazing how much is written in the Jewish sources. He's the author of one of my favorite books that I keep on my desk, The Ark Report. The Ark Report, if you're into biblical archaeology, it's a must-have. It talks all about the search for the Holy Ark of the Covenant, along with a lot of other subjects. But it gives the Jewish sources that are incredibly unvague. They're pretty precise and pretty. There's a lot of them that uncover what a lot of people call mysteries, but which are not mysteries to Harry. Rabbi Moskoff actually called me. He has some really good news about a really difficult subject. If I could just give a little background, there was a recent story about an archaeological site on Mount Eval, which is in Shomron, which is in Samaria. And Mount Eval, as we know, was mentioned in the Bible in Deuteronomy, chapter 11, verse 29. When Hashem, the God, brings you into the land that you're about to enter and possess, you shall pronounce the blessing at Mount Gerizim and the curses at Mount Eval. So what happened there is not only was that what the Jews did as they were commanded, but there was an altar built there. That altar was found by an archaeologist. Is a really interesting story we'll talk about later, a man named Adam Zertal, and we'll talk about that later. But the problem was that the Palestinian Authority was actually building a road, taking all of the stones from this holy and incredibly significant archaeological site, and they were literally grinding it into gravel and building a road. And it's almost as if their intention, the road was not really necessary. The intention was to destroy the site. And through a lot of efforts by people, not so much from the government, we finally got the government to pay attention to it. However, this program of destructing sites is an ongoing thing. So, Rabbi Harry, I'm really happy to have you here. Could you tell us a little bit about the site? What its significance is?
Absolutely. First of all, it's great to be on your show again with Israel 365 News. That's fantastic. And you, of course, are a dear friend. And you've got the courage, to keep being on the leading edge. And that's what this is. That's what this story is. I'll say a little bit about, you made a reference to Deuteronomy. So there is an actual commandment to build this altar itself. Besides what you said, the blessings and the curses on Mount Gerizim and Mount Eval, and then the Ark of the Covenant was in the valley there in the middle. So just before that, in the Torah, God commands actually the building of the Ark itself after the Israelites crossed the Jordan River and after they conquered Jericho. So the commandment is to build an altar out of whole stones, natural uncut stones, and to rejoice there. And it's actually Deuteronomy 27, chapter 27, verses 5 to 8. That actually talks about the altar itself. And then, like you said, it talks about the blessings and the curses, etc. Now, it's right there. The altar itself is right there. You can see I've been there myself. I've been there twice. It's thrilling to be there. And it really is. It's actually built, believe it or not, 3,333 years ago. 3333. Okay, in the year actually 20, let's see, we got the Torah, Moses on Mount Sinai was the year 2448 from creation. and then 40 years after that. So yeah, that's basically where we are today. Actually, today is important. It's my birthday today, my Hebrew birthday. So
Oh,
it's a
there we go. There
it's
we
a good
go.
day to do the interview. But so the when the altar itself was actually set up, that's in the book of Joshua, right? Which is chapter 8, verses 30 and 31, when they actually did it. And it really is, Eliel, it really is indisputable. When you see the altar itself, it's indisputable truth, confirming the truth of the Bible. It's biblical archaeology in the greatest sense of the term. It's really proof that these things really happened to the Israelites, and that God exists, the Bible, the veracity of the Bible, uh, and it's there's no site, there's no
As
doubt.
if there was ever any doubt, you know.
Depends who you talk to. These left wing NGOs like Avec Savet, these
Right.
they're
What
really
what
politically left leaning, far left. You know, they believe Palestine should be freed, and it's not, the altar is just some type of an ancient fortress. And
So
yeah,
what Rabbi Moskoff is referring to is there are actually NGOs, non-governmental organizations, left wing, and they are claiming that it is, I don't know what their claim is, that it's illegal for Israel to investigate these sites, but they are actually trying to shut down the archaeology, the actual archaeology.
right.
Um, and they say we're anti-science. I mean, give me a break. They're trying to. I've even spoken to Dr. Scott Stripling, who is in charge of the dig at Shiloh, and they were trying to dox all of the volunteers and the archaeologists so that Christians from America came from America to volunteer to do archaeology in Israel because of love of the Bible and love of Israel and love of science and love of truth, and
Right.
they were trying to dox them so that people would do them harm. So there is a concerted, organized effort to shut down archaeology of all things in
That's
Israel.
right.
So let's jump right in. Why are they doing it? Why are they trying to actively destroy, grind into dust a 3,300-year-old archaeology site? Why? What's the reason?
Well, let's start just by, it's connected to, like you're saying, like Avec Chevet, these NGOs, which, by the way, are funded by European, the EU, mostly. These anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, that they're saying that the official quote is that it's nothing special, this site, but even they are forced to say that it's a Iron Age cultic ritual site, something like that, but not necessarily belonging to the Jews. It's all about
God forbid.
the whole their tune is, the usual narrative. It's on Palestinian land and all of that. But the truth of the matter is that you can't get better proof that the ancient Israelites, that the Jews, that this is our heritage, etc. So basically, what happened was a couple of weeks ago, an Arab working with this group that was under the PA, the Palestinian Authority, came over there and built a road from Nablus, Shechem, leading to another one of the Arab towns near Mount Ebal. So they built this dirt road, and they took some of the stones from this ancient fence. It's a low fence that goes all the way around the altar. They didn't touch the altar itself, because then it would be, they were testing the waters. You know what I mean? Especially now that Joe Biden is in, and they're getting support again from the U.S. So they're seeing how far they can go. This is called Area B, this area, which has Palestinian control, unfortunately. It used to be Area C until a couple of years ago, which would have been under Israeli control. But I actually have a letter from over 50 or so archaeologists, including the very left-leaning ones, that this site is extremely important. It's one of the only early Iron Age biblical sites that we have, going back to 13th century BC. So that's very, very important. And for me, it's huge. It's one of the most critical ancient sites, biblical sites in Israel. So the Palestinians, and the mayor of this town, of this Arab town near Nablus, where the connects the road, actually let it out, I think by accident. He actually said, we're trying to get easier access to the site. So why would the Palestinians want access to our sacred site, Mizbeach, a sacrificial altar of Joshua? And I'm sure their intentions aren't to study it scientifically, you know? So I think that the reasons are rather nefarious, and people are trying to downplay it as just some type of fortress, ancient fortress. But if you go there, you see it's for sure an altar. So yeah, we're trying to protect it.
Well, John, one of our viewers, Johnny, he said, it's clear why they're doing it. Hatred of God. Okay,
Yes.
I'll go with that.
Yeah,
I'll go with that.
that's right.
There's also, I think there's another why, because there is, I think Johnny was correct. There's a hatred of God. There's a hatred of truth,
Right.
and there's a hatred of it's part of a larger agenda to wipe out any trace of the connection between Jews and Israel, the land, which is actually the connection of Jews and God, or actually the entire world and God. They don't want to have God in the world, so they erase this connection, and they're doing it on the Temple Mount as well. I know that you've come across that as well. You fight against that as well. So
it's all connected, people.
So what is my hero Rabbi Moskoff doing about this?
Well, hopefully, I don't know if I'm a hero yet, but maybe one day. Now that the two-state solution is back on the table because of the Biden administration, so this site and other similar sites, but especially for me, this one, as I write in my book, the Ark Report, it has to be protected. So I've started a project called the Joshua Project, and what I'm going to do is protect it, make it an official heritage site, Jewish heritage site, working with the Shomron, with the Samaria Regional Council, and Yossi Dagan, and others that are involved politically. I mean, even if you go all the way up to Rivlin, who's the president of Israel, he also knows about this, and he sent a letter to the defense minister, Benny Gantz, that the IDF must protect the site, at least temporarily, until we know what's going on. So that's where I come in. I really am, my goal is to, especially now it's an election year, make it an election issue and make sure that this gets on the table no matter what happens, even if they decide to take it and make it a two-state solution, that's Palestinian territory, heaven forbid. Nevertheless, it has to be protected. And the Oslo Accords actually has a clause to protect. Unfortunately, this site wasn't specifically listed, but it's a breach of the Oslo Accords for them to touch any of these sites. Not that they care, but it has to be restored. I'm planning on restoring it. And even between you and me, this is the first time actually I'm saying it publicly, that I plan on bringing people, non-Jews, Gentiles specifically, to the site, those who want to actually bring an altar, bring a sacrifice, on this altar itself to God, to the one God, the God of Israel, the Lord of the universe, which is actually permitted halakhically according to Jewish law. And I'm a Kohen, I'm a priest that can help from a distance, so to speak. Jews aren't allowed to bring sacrifices since the destruction of the Herodian temple 2,000 years ago almost. But ironically, non-Jews can, and it doesn't have to be specifically there. It could be in their backyard, if according to law, if it's allowed. But I want to do this over the board, and I think what better place, it would be a huge, huge spiritual, what's the word, redemption? I don't know, for anybody, and priceless also, to be able to do this.
I want to point out, just for our listeners, yes, we're talking about, Rabbi Moskoff is talking about the first site where Jews brought sacrifices in the land of Israel.
That's right.
And he wants to, pardon me, he wants to enable enable non-Jews to bring sacrifices at that site. And I understand that there are many Christians who object to this on theological terms. I also know that a lot of Christians support this for theological reasons. From a Jewish perspective, this is a reaffirmation of the sacrifice that Noah made when he came out of the ark after the flood, and
Right.
in which the I know this. Why do I know this? Because I've done this before. I
That's right.
participated in a ceremony where a group of non-Jews brought a sacrifice on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the Temple Mount, where in a way that Jews were not able to. We were not able to bring a sacrifice. We did, however, watch and participate. It was as if they were bringing a sacrifice for us or in our stead, since we are only permitted to bring sacrifices on the Temple Mount. We don't need the temple. We do need to do it on the place that David bought, the Goren, the threshing floor. So it is theologically challenging. If you'd like to talk about it, it is not at all, God forbid, a challenge or meant as an insult or anything like that towards Christianity.
No,
It is, if anything, meant to, I think, connect.
absolutely.
And
It's
that's
for everybody. Literally, like except for the Jews.
exactly. It is,
But
and as I said, I mean, clearly, it's the site where Jews brought the first sacrifice in the land of Israel.
right.
So it's definitely a connection. It's definitely a connection.
It's also extremely interesting because that site, the original altar, sacrificial altar of Joshua, is actually, I sent a couple pictures for your viewers to see. And eventually I'll have it on my website as well. All of this, it's so new, it's not even on my website yet, really, but I'll have more information as well on how to deal with that, contact me, etc. But like you said, Noah brought in his offering, it was so important that God was so thankful, I guess you could say, pleased, put it that way, by it, and said, Reach lichoach Hashem, by his pleasant, how do you say that? The pleasantness that came out of Noah offering that to God.
Aroma.
Right, like you would say aroma, so to speak, that he decided at that moment, after Noah brought the offering, never to bring a flood again and destroy the world. So it obviously means a lot. And I witnessed one of these also myself as well, around the Dead Sea area many years ago, in conjunction with the Sanhedrin. The nation, the Sanhedrin back then was much more, I think, operative, much more active. But it was an incredible experience to see. That this Gentile man was from Texas, actually, came over and did it, and he really did it the right way. It was amazing.
Yeah, sacrifices tend to be the one time I went through it. It's hugely transformative. You go through it, and it's a real experience. So to prepare this site for that is, I think it's huge. Whether or not people take part in it is up to them. But I think it should be an option if people go for it. If you'd like, I have specifically the person to talk about the relevance of sacrifices to Christianity. My dear friend John Enerson, he's really an expert on it. Right. I'd like to discuss it with him.
And like President Trump said, yesterday, President Trump he had a whole, I won't say a comeback, but it was great to see him live again. And he talked about this cancel culture. And, this is something that I think could, I don't know if you could call it messianic, but to be able to bring back this culture in a good way, it would be really, I think it'll be really special. And it's right in the middle of nowhere. It's not near anything urban at all. It's on the northeastern ridge of this mountain. And it's funny, Eliel, because the question that was asked to me was, how could it be for 3,000 years, you know, nobody's finding this? So the answer is they were looking in the wrong spot. Hundreds of years ago, there were archaeologists that came from France and England, etc., and over the decades and millennia, but they were all looking on the south side, which is the side that faces Mount Gerizim, like you were talking about it in the Bible. There's the altar right there, and this is on the northeastern ridge of Mount Ebal. And so they were looking on the southern side where this other dramatic event happened with the blessings and the curse, with the ark in the middle of the valley there. So, and it was covered by stones. The whole thing was covered by a huge mound of stones to protect the sanctity of the site. And so when Adam Zertal in the early 80s, was doing a survey of the area, he just, he wasn't even religious, but he took off the rocks, and it took him a while. But once he found out it's really the altar, it really transformed him. He believed in the Bible after, and it was.
So if I can, Rabbi Moskoff, there's people don't realize that in Israel, archaeology is the Bible. The first archaeologists, the British archaeologists came, 150 years ago. They came with Bible in hand. Even the British Army showed up with Bible in hand, because if you're going to come around in Israel, there's a military history here as well. But in 1980, a man named Adam Zertal, an Israeli, he was wounded in the war, so he was on crutches.
Right.
Adam Zertal came to Mount Ebal. He did what's called a survey, which is just walking around, not doing any digging, just getting an idea of the site in archaeological terms. In 1980, he visited the site, and
there you go.
And he found this. He saw this mound of rocks, and he went back to his professor, and he said, something, Mount Ebal, pile of rocks. I think I found the altar of Joshua. And his professor said, no, you didn't. Adam Zertal said, why? He said, because it doesn't exist. It's impossible. Exactly. It doesn't exist. The Bible is cute stories, but it has no relevance to archaeology. And Adam Zertal said, oh, that's interesting. So he went back and he started doing some digging. And after the digging season, he came back. He said, I really think I found it. And his professor said, no, it doesn't exist. Forget about this Bible stuff. And he said, oh, okay. And he went back year after year. He found what he found. And finally, when his professor said to him, no, it's not Joshua's altar, and Adam Zertal said, you can go away. I know what I found. And some of the ways they find it is, of course, because it's undressed stones, meaning uncut stones, since the altar is meant to extend life, and the iron is used in weapons, so it shortens life. So anytime we build an altar, it's with uncut stones. And also they found bones from animals that were specific and to the sacrifices, which there are specific cuts of meat you bring, large quantities. So eventually, Adam Zertal, yes, he changed his opinion of what he found, and he changed his entire approach to archaeology and became an amazing archaeologist by admitting that sometimes the Bible gets it right. We know it's a little more than sometimes, but
I should point out as well, since you mentioned it, that he, by the way, was like a hero to his, he was, really a proper archaeologist, professor, and a doctor at Haifa, University of Haifa, and very, very well respected. Then when they found out his opinion, they thought it was, oh yeah, maybe it was an early Iron Age watchtower or something. But he had his opinion. He saw in the Talmud the picture of the Mizbeach, of the altar in the Herodian temple, and there were crazy similarities that cannot be avoided. And it inspired him so much. So he actually after that, after he published his findings, and he says this is the altar of Joshua, uh, his peers completely disowned him. They smeared his name just to be said publicly. And they never answered any of his papers, any of his questions. They totally disowned him. And similar to the way that what happened with Dr. Vendel Jones, he did incredible work. He found the incense and other things, and he had a real merit, and he was really a hero, actually a real hero in the 6-Day War. But they smeared him too, especially in the papers. They said he's gone off, and he's off the wall, he's eccentric, and this and that. And in the end, though, he really was onto something in Qumran, which we still actually are digging there for different vessels of the temple. That's ongoing today, even. But he was definitely onto something, and the secular academic archaeology that whole the whole group of people really disowned him and smeared him in the press, and same unfortunately with Dr. Zertal. But he was right.
I think you got it right when you said sect. That's an interesting thing, is there are so many archaeologists who is even non-religious archaeologists who they found that the Bible works for them in archaeology. Dr. Eilat Mazar, she gets censured. She's amazing. Right. I like her a lot. Dr. Gabriel Barkai. In this, it's interesting that people should know that there is an actual battle going on in the field of archaeology in Israel. And strangely enough, the people who reject the Bible are actually anti-science, shall I say. Yeah. The fact is that the people who use the Dr. Eilat Mazar, she uses the Bible and she gets amazing results, and that drives them crazy.
Right.
So that's why I think. I'm sorry. Yeah, Josh.
No, I heard someone call Joshua, so I'm on.
This whole thing is called the Joshua Project.
Happy birthday, Rabbi Moskoff. How are you? Thank you. So I happen to have the clip, so I wanted to show that as a very short video clip of the actual destruction. So let me put that on for everyone to see.
Thank you.
أكوام الحجارة المتواجدة في برناط لفردها واستخدامها بسكورس في شارع المروج.
I want to point out, we're not talking about a couple of Arabs with shovels. This is heavy. This is heavy equipment that is ripping up everything, destroying any trace of anything that was there before. In a matter of hours, 3,000 years of history is gone.
Right. So basically, just to explain a bit about what they actually, that fence itself that they were destroying, it's a footprint structure. There's 6 of them in the Jordan Valley. Ancient, very, very, sacred sites that the Israelites built. This one surrounding the altar, but other ones, it looks like a sandal, like a huge sandal, and it represents like the Israelites having a foothold, so to speak, in the country, because that's really what it says in the Bible. And it's part of this footprint structure that they dismantled.
We have a comment. Johnny 40 says, "Oh, you're joking, and your government knows about it." There's a problem there in that when it comes to archaeology, not all archaeology is equal. There's archaeology inside of Israel, which is, of course, archaeology in this region it goes back way further. We're not talking about Betsy Ross's house during the American Revolution. We're going back 5,000 years. Or 3,000 years with that. And that's under the authority of the Israel Antiquities Authority, who does an amazing job. But in what's called the territories, meaning Judea and Samaria, which is where most of the Bible actually took place, that comes under what's called Kogat, which is the civilian authority of the IDF, and they have their own rules, and they treat archaeology very differently, and it's a delicate balancing act, because there was the Oslo process. As horrible as it was, it did cede some authority. Coordination of government activities in the territories. Just the word territories already shows that it's inaccurate and based on lies. And Kogat, there's a question: who actually owns this, and whose heritage is it? I remember one time the Dead Sea Scrolls were going to be sent to a museum in America, and there was the Israel Museum. The people who were in charge of the Dead Sea Scrolls said, "Okay, now you have to sign a paper saying you promised to give them back." And the museum in America said, "We're not ready to sign that," because the Palestinian Authority claims that the Dead Sea Scrolls, written in Hebrew over 2,000 years ago, belongs to the Palestinians, and it is a Palestinian document.
Because they found it in Qumran. So
they found it in Qumran by the Dead Sea.
Right. So
they want to. So they have this. The Palestinians, I feel sorry for them, because here you have archaeology that clearly shows that it's not, that our Bible is accurate, and it's problematic for them. And unfortunately, the Israeli government is trying to play this shuki-muki, chuki-muki kind of game, and they're getting themselves in trouble because they're allowing this. I mean, what we just saw, it really, I'm working hard not to cry. You have, they've had the same thing happen on the Temple Mount, where they bring in heavy machinery and just rip it up, and it's the Temple Mount, for God's sake.
I like one of your interviews where we would, I don't know if it was the last time we spoke, when we had an interview where we brought in that hole that was found on the Temple Mount that was uncovered, and it was fairly big, and that leads to tunnels, as I point out. Some of them may actually lead to the, if not the Ark itself, but actually going down a little deeper to some of the other vessels of the tabernacle, like it says in the Talmud, that was buried there underneath the Temple Mount. Just amazing, absolutely amazing.
They filled it in with concrete. They literally filled it in with concrete. And that Josh was. And I spoke to the archaeologist who was looking at it. He said this is at least Second Temple, perhaps even First Temple. And when they filled it in with concrete, I called the guy on the phone, and he was inches away from crying, literally crying. He's an archaeologist, young man. I'm sorry?
Was Joshua there, you were saying?
I think Josh's balcony overlooks the Temple Mount, so he saw it. So this destruction is ongoing, and this site is not, this site, we have verses in the Bible, in the Torah, referring and describing this site.
For sure.
And we just saw these trucks literally grinding the Bible into dust. Literally. Yeah,
that's the idea. That's what Ayelet Shaked, who I met, she actually said about this. Obviously elections are coming up, and Yamina and everything like that. But Ayelet Shaked actually wrote down what she told me over there. She said, let me just find it over here.
She's a tough lady. I like her.
Yeah, she's very tough. She's great. She's a former justice minister. She said, there are relentless attempts to weaken our hold on our homeland and to obscure the Jewish people's glorious past in the land of Israel through destruction of archaeology. So that sort of sums it up in a way. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And I am doing something about it. So I really hope we have what it takes. We have the funding. So we're going to go ahead and do it, God willing.
Member of Knesset, Bezalel Smotrich, immediately when hearing the news, he insisted that as a response, they should immediately fire the heads of Kogat, and they should dismantle the entire coordination unit because clearly they're not doing their job.
Yeah, that was great on his part, and I hope that look, that would be very, it would be good in a way because there are literally hundreds of archaeological sites in the PA controlled areas in Area B, and they're being looted, and the IAA, the Israeli Antiquity Authority, they know this, and they try to be on top of it, but they just don't have the manpower or the videos to actually track these guys.
Or there's no political will to do it.
Right. And Kogat would for sure do much more. No question. They look the other way.
And like I said, it's the biblical heartland. So when you give up the biblical heartland, I think it's not accidental. I think there's a very strong statement there of what you're holding on to. If you're not holding on to the biblical, if you're not holding on to Joshua's altar, where we have actual verses in the Bible describing, if you're not willing to hold on to that, well, we know what we're talking about.
That's right. Anything's it's a free. How do you say? It's like it's
free for all.
That's it. Thank you. It's a free for all, right? I actually have to get moving.
Okay.
Another, meeting, but like they say, Yeshua, thanks so much.
Rabbi Moskoff, I can't thank you enough. You're doing amazing work. Every time I speak with you, I get inspired that the battle is not done yet. We still have a chance of stopping the waves of evil that are trying to wipe us away. So I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. I highly recommend the ARC report, not because of anything other than the fact that I went through this book in one Shabbos, and then the next Shabbos went through it again. Highly recommend it. And we're going to be watching you, Rabbi Moskoff, for the amazing work you do. Thanks so much for joining us.
Anybody who wants to take part or actually really thinking about doing a sacrifice and looking into it, of course, you can contact Eliel or myself on my website, and we'll give you more information. Kol hakavod, like they say. More power to you.
And I'd like to remind you all that thank you for joining us. And if you bless us, we got to bless you back. That's the way it's written. That's the way it works. Thanks for joining us. Have an amazing day.